Welcome to Global Watch. Please subscribe and hit the bell icon for more breaking updates. Tonight, the Supreme Court has fundamentally altered American economic policy, striking down the unilateral tariff policies enacted by former President Donald Trump. This landmark verdict redefines presidential power and sets the stage for one of the largest financial unwinds in U.S. history. The implications are vast, affecting everything from consumer prices to international trade relationships. For years, the world watched as the U.S. pursued an aggressive trade strategy. Tonight, that era ends with a decisive legal conclusion. At its core, the case asked, can a president alone impose sweeping taxes on foreign goods? The court's answer a firm no. Nearly 700 American businesses, from shoe importers to distilleries, brought this challenge, arguing the tariffs pushed them to the brink. Their victory now triggers a massive, unprecedented process, refunding billions in tariffs collected by the government. As the consequences begin to unfold, we break down what this historic decision means for the U.S. economy and America's place in the world. To understand today's ruling, we must look back at the Trump tariffs. These policies, a signature of Trump's presidency, began in 2018 and expanded in 2025, targeting China, Canada, and Mexico, and sparking a global trade war. The administration used the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, IEPA, a 1977 law, to justify imposing steep tariffs, an interpretation critics called unconstitutional. Trump was the first president to use IEPA this way, alarming legal experts and business leaders. The tariffs included a 20% fentanyl tariff and a 10% reciprocal tariff, creating a complex web of regulations. The costs were largely passed to U.S. importers, forcing businesses to absorb costs, raise prices, or scramble for new suppliers. In 2025 alone, over 40 changes to the tariff code left companies struggling to keep up. Trump defended the tariffs as a way to pay down the $38 trillion national debt or fund rebates for families. But these projections depended on the tariffs surviving legal scrutiny. The stage was set for a Supreme Court showdown, with the fate of the American economy and the separation of powers at stake. Tonight, that battle has reached its conclusion. The path to the Supreme Court was driven by over 700 small businesses, including Deer Stags and Green Bar Distillery, who argued the president overstepped constitutional authority by imposing tariffs, essentially taxes, without Congress. Their lawsuit claimed IEPA could not give the president a blank check to create new taxes on imports. The Trump administration argued tariffs were a tool of foreign policy, not domestic taxation. Former Acting Solicitor General Neil Katyal, representing the businesses, insisted the Constitution is clear. Only Congress can levy taxes. The case culminated in intense oral arguments, with justices skeptical of the administration's claims of unilateral authority. Chief Justice Roberts framed the conflict as a clash between Congress's power to tax and the executive's power over foreign affairs. The decision would hinge on the court's swing votes, with the real-world consequences looming large. Today, the Supreme Court delivered a sweeping 6-3 decision. The president cannot unilaterally impose tariffs under IEPA. Chief Justice Roberts, joined by a broad coalition, wrote that the power to tax belongs to Congress, not the executive. The ruling draws a clear line. Even in emergencies, the president cannot bypass the Constitution's separation of powers. The dissenters argued for broader presidential authority in foreign affairs, warning the decision could limit future presidents. For the businesses, it's a resounding victory and a reaffirmation of the rule of law. The verdict immediately nullifies all tariffs imposed under IEPA since 2018. The U.S. Treasury must now prepare to refund every dollar collected under the now voided policy. The scale of this fiscal reckoning is unprecedented. With the court's decision, attention turns to the daunting task of refunding up to $1 trillion to thousands of businesses. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent warned Congress that refunds could reach $1 trillion, covering all tariffs collected since 2018. In theory, Customs and Border Protection has records of who paid what, offering hope for a smooth process. There's precedent. In 2018, Customs quickly refunded duties under the Generalized System of Preferences. But experts warn of a bureaucratic nightmare. Businesses face a huge paperwork burden, and customs brokers are already stretched thin. Untangling years of data and fluctuating rates will take months, if not years. The government must find a way to finance these refunds, likely through new debt or reallocating funds. Administrative costs alone will run into the millions. For struggling businesses, the promise of a refund is welcome, but relief will not be immediate. The logistical and fiscal challenges are just beginning. The decision creates clear winners and losers across the economy. U.S. importers who paid billions in tariffs are the immediate winners. Refunds will inject capital, spur hiring, and lower consumer prices. Consumers benefit as tariffs vanish, easing inflation on goods from electronics to food. The U.S. Treasury, however, faces a massive budget hole and a liability of up to $1 trillion in refunds. Congress may be forced to consider spending cuts or tax increases to fill the gap. Some domestic industries that benefited from tariffs now face renewed foreign competition, while manufacturers relying on imports will see costs fall. The impact on American workers is mixed. Some jobs may be preserved as automation pressures ease, while others face new competition. The long-term effect on employment depends on how businesses use their refunds and how the economy adjusts. The policy's effects were never uniform. Some win, some lose, but the landscape has changed. The post-tariff era begins with uncertainty and opportunity. To grasp the ruling's impact, we turn to legal, economic, and business experts. CNN's Joan Biskupic notes Chief Justice Roberts built a broad coalition to avoid a partisan split on such a fundamental issue. Economists call the refund liability a fiscal earthquake, forcing Washington to confront deficits and debunking the idea that tariffs could solve the national debt. Dan Anthony of the We Pay the Tariffs Coalition says unpredictability was as damaging as the financial cost. Businesses need stability to thrive. The ruling restores a predictable, rules-based trading system. Trade policy experts say the decision signals a return to traditional trade policy, with Congress and the executive working together. It reassures allies that U.S. trade policy will be governed by law, not unilateral action. The ruling will help rebuild trust and strengthen America's negotiating position, but repairing relationships will take time. The decision is a watershed for small businesses, a challenge for fiscal policy, and a reset for global trade. The world is watching how the U.S. navigates this new era. The consequences will echo for years. The Supreme Court's decision is a political earthquake, curbing executive power and reasserting Congress's constitutional role. For Trump and his supporters, it's a major blow. His signature policy is dismantled, and his claims about tariff revenue are now moot. The ruling energizes opponents who frame it as a victory for the rule of law over executive overreach. Congress regains authority over trade, but now faces the challenge of legislating on a divisive issue and filling the budget gap. Lawmakers must confront fiscal realities previously masked by tariff revenue. The decision tests America's democratic institutions, showing the resilience of checks and balances. The judicial branch has checked the executive, and Congress's authority is reaffirmed. Even in a polarized environment, the Constitution's structures still function. The rule of law remains a pillar of American democracy. Tonight's Supreme Court decision closes a tumultuous chapter in trade policy and opens a new one filled with challenges and opportunities. The immediate focus is on the logistics of refunds and fiscal adjustments. Beyond the financials, the ruling reaffirms the separation of powers and the principle that America is governed by laws, not decrees. The removal of tariffs brings relief to many, but also new competitive pressures. With legal uncertainty gone, businesses can plan for the future, and the U.S. can return to a rules-based trading system. The coming months will test how quickly refunds are processed and how Congress responds to new fiscal pressures. This decision is a powerful civics lesson, showing the enduring power of the Constitution and the ability of citizens to hold government accountable. As the nation navigates the aftermath, the path forward will be guided by the constitutional principles so powerfully affirmed tonight.